Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician turned speaker, coach, and consultant. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I help women, leaders, and executives navigate personal and professional challenges with clarity, confidence, and self-compassion. I also work with leadership teams and organizations to optimize their performance and impact. In this show, you will hear real-world experiences and expert insights to help you cultivate a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself so that you can show up as your best self, whether in your career, community, or personal relationships. Please note that this show is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. Today, I am so excited to welcome Toni Collis to the show. Toni is an executive and leadership coach for women in tech and the host of Leading Women in Tech, a leading podcast for women navigating senior leadership in technology. Toni works with women from the director level to the C-suite to help them lead with clarity, influence, and sustainability, especially in environments where they're often the only woman in the room. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We need more women in these leadership spaces. And at the same time, we face a lot of unique challenges being the only woman in the room. And today we're going to talk about that. I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you, Toni. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to have this conversation. As you personally know, it's a passion topic for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really exciting because actually Toni and I are sort of switching seats today. Earlier this week, we recorded an episode for her podcast where I was a guest, and and today I'm taking the host seat and we get to learn from Toni. So I want to set the stage a little bit first. About 60% of my listeners are women. And so this episode is obviously such an important topic for them. And I truly do see this topic as being part of self-care. This show is Essential Self-Care, and it's all about the types of self-care that we might not necessarily think about as self-care, but how we're showing up and what we need to do to feel confident and feel strong in ourselves as women showing up in these spaces is truly, I believe, part of self-care. And so that's why I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you. And I was really excited to invite you to this show. And so this episode is obviously such an important topic for my female listeners, but it's also vitally important for anyone who doesn't identify as a woman, because I believe that we can truly elevate our voices when we also have allies in the room. And my 100%. Male listeners tend to be very self-aware, thoughtful, reflective men. So I know you'll get a lot out of this conversation, both for yourself and to support the women in your workplace and in your personal lives. So Toni, with that being said, you, similarly to me, focus on working with women in leadership. The only difference being that you focus specifically on working with women in the technology industry. And so my first question to you is, it's something that you shared with me during our first chat together, and you shared your why. And you have such a beautiful vision for your work that I would love for you to share that with our listeners first before we go any further, why you feel it's so important to elevate women in technology specifically.
Yeah. I feel very strongly that diversity is a good thing. Now, we've reached a point in our society where DEI, inclusion have become dirty words, and that breaks my heart. But here's the reality of it. I was a techie myself, tech executive, got all the way to the C-suite. I've seen firsthand what happens when we have poor leadership. I've seen companies fold. I've seen great technology be built badly. I have seen great ideas shut down for the wrong reasons. And leadership has a lot to answer for. And here's the thing I also know from the data. The data is so robust here, which is why it's so heartbreaking that we're going through this phase of anti-DEI. We know that companies do better when we have diversity in the room. The more diversity we have in the decision-making team, the more diversity of thought, lived experience, ideas, the whole lot, the better the technology is. And my personal view is we desperately need better technology as a human race to solve all the problems we're facing. I could name many of them. technology is a massive part of the solution. Just what we're going through right now with AI. I think AI could be amazing or it could be horrendous. And we can have a conversation about that another time. We need diversity at the table to make sure it delivers what the human race needs and deserves. And if women are 51% of the human race, if we're not involved, and we know so much technology over the last century has not involved women, and we know what happens. I'm sure many of the audience know the kind of things I'm talking about when it goes wrong because we don't have diversity at the table. And so between having poor leadership and lack of diversity, I'm like, this is like a simple problem to solve. This is the easiest, lower hanging fruit. Let's make sure these women have a seat at the table, have a voice, know how to operate in this environment, and open the doors for the women behind them. It's not rocket science, so why aren't we doing it? And that's why I do what I do. I know how lonely it is at the top as the only woman in the room. I know the damage that poor leadership can do. I know how hard it is to be a woman when we don't have advocates and allies around us, or we don't realize how much we're on the back foot for most of our careers. The number of conversations I have where a woman reaches her mid-30s, early 40s, and they've been saying the whole time, I've not experienced bias. I've not experienced that. And then suddenly they're like, why have I been passed over again? It's another one. And suddenly they're like, maybe this bias is a thing. And I think it's so unconscious now that we are all told it's not there anymore. It's not the experience our parents had. But it's still there all the time. The way, it's just the subtle things, the way we're treated, the way we know we earn less than men. We're just less likely to get those gentle little like prompts to do something a little bit different. We're less likely to be lifted up in the room. We're less likely to be advocated for when we're not in the room. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm on a mission to change.
You brought up so many great points, and I want to mention and emphasize here, a lot of what you just brought up is found in the research. Like, this isn't just your opinion. Like, I've obviously I work in this space as well. And so I've, read a lot about the research and the numbers behind that. And all of those things that you just said about like maybe not getting those subtle prompts to do something a little bit different, not having your voices and ideas elevated when you're not in the room by others. Whereas, in these gender in the workplace studies in leadership, I mean, we see that those sort of things do occur, that men do get more of those opportunities. And so I just want to emphasize that while I don't have like the numbers and of that research right in front of me, that a lot of what you just shared is found in like, there is research backing this all up, that this all is still occurring, that this all still exists. And this idea that you brought up of us not even necessarily for a while perhaps being aware of these biases, even as women, even though we are experiencing it. And part of that is so interesting to me because it just goes to show the degree of sociocultural conditioning and just how ingrained it is until we have some of those sort of pivotal moments that make us really see like, oh, in this situation, it's even more obvious. And often there's so many situations leading up to that where we may have been passed over, or maybe some microaggressions or things of that nature that we've just let sort of slide off our back so that we can keep moving forward, so that we can keep advancing. But the fact is that all of that is still there, and that's a lot that our male counterparts don't experience and don't have to deal with. And when you think about having, diverse voices, and again, the research does show that women in these leadership positions do result in greater benefits for businesses and companies. Yeah. But when you started sharing that, I was thinking about, as a physician, I was thinking about even just technological advancements in medicine, and specifically thinking about the field of gynecology.
Yes. I mean, I was just reading yesterday about how like endometriosis has only really been accepted as a thing that we need to be caring about since women have become gynecologists. You're thinking, oh my goodness me, it affects 1 in 10 women. Then there's the whole mammogram thing. How many women do we know who said, God, if a woman designed a mammogram, it wouldn't be that painful. If men had to have those, like, it wouldn't be like that. It's oh, it's heartbreaking, actually. I can
Right.
laugh about it, but it's also heartbreaking at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, all this, the sort of technology that was created for women's health primarily came from men and a man's world and a man's
Yeah.
perspective, which it's just
Well,
impossible to
isn't it true that
understand.
like they tested breast cancer treatment on men first before women?
Oh,
That
goodness.
was one of those things I found out. I
Mhm.
was like, I mean, I know there's a gender problem with drug discovery, but seriously, I know men get breast cancer, like, but the numbers are so different. Like,
The numbers
why
are so
would you
different.
test a drug on men before you? But I think it didn't even, the first round of like drugs for breast cancer didn't get tested on women at all until it got into the market.
Mm.
That's just, I think that's the case. It just, when I've heard that, I was just like, oh my goodness me, we've got so much to do to do as a species.
Yeah, that's astounding. And I'm at an age now where me and a lot of my friends are talking about perimenopause, and this is like such a new, like relatively new and hot topic because there just wasn't interest in it before. And it was just kind of, I was actually going for a walk with a friend of mine just yesterday, and she was like, in the olden days, it was just like, okay, women at this age are getting quote unquote hysteria, not realizing it's like related to something physiological going on in our bodies.
Yeah.
But
I could have a whole conversation about perimenopause too, because it's a hot topic around here as well. It's just, it's really sad. And this thing is, right, it's really obvious in medicine and in the field you came from, because we have a gender divide, and we now know that men, other than the gynae stuff, we still need to be treated differently. But I think we forget about that from the technology perspective. Except we know that when Google Translate, right, we all kind of remember, maybe not, but I'm hoping that some of your listeners are a little bit like our age and therefore remember that before Google Translate. Here's the thing that most people don't know. When Google Translate turned on, it removed female pronouns from the internet overnight, because only white Caucasian men were involved in developing Google Translate. They have blind spots. I just want to call out, we all have blind spots. One of the things I do with the women I work with is call out their blind spots. If you just have white men building a technology, you're not going to include the needs of everyone. And so, yeah, it was like a decade's worth of progress of elevating the history of women was just removed from the internet overnight when they turned that on.
Wow. I did not know that, but I can completely believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, the first touch screens, like what we all have on our phones now, didn't work for women's fingers. It's stuff like that. And a lot of the time you don't realize there's a problem with it until 5 years after it's gone to market. And the whole AI debate, I've been talking about this for a lot longer than we've all been using LLMs. If we are training AI on the data on the internet, it's not surprising it's biased, because the internet is biased. We know the internet is full of male historical figures. It's full of men discovering stuff. That's just the gender discrepancy. And then we get race, religion, ethnicity, country of origin. If we don't have everybody involved, and then there's the ethics around AI as well. And I think that's something that all the big names in AI are currently being led by men. And I think most of them have all male boards. In fact, one big name, one of the top 5, recently, I think last year, fired the women from their board. Yeah. And this is terrifying to me. Those are the things that are big and in our face. Yeah. But
I just did a recent episode about, so for listeners, you can go back and listen to episode 102 of this show. I just did an episode about generative AI and mental health, its impact on mental health as well, which all of this plays into. I talked a little bit about, how they're training these models, and you explained it just really beautifully and in more detail than what I did in that episode, actually, about how it's being trained and how there's not diversity in what it's being trained on, and how that is lending it to not being culturally adaptable. As well. This is fascinating, and we
I know.
So now
a little bit off where we intended to go, but this is such a passion topic for me. It's not the work I do, but it's why I do the work I do, if you see what I mean.
Which I love, and that's why I wanted you to share that, and that's why I wanted us to start there. And so now I think we've built a case for the importance and the value of bringing these diverse voices into these leadership rooms, So, what I want to ask you next is with the women who you are working with, who are in those leadership positions, who are maybe the only woman in the room or the only woman who has a seat at that table, what are the most frequent concerns and challenges that you hear from them? And how do you even begin to address those with your clients?
That's a big question. That is a big question. So, I mean, it really depends on why they've come to me. Sometimes they've come to me because they've had some feedback. Maybe they're going for promotion and they've been told a certain thing about why they're not getting promoted. Often we don't hear your voice enough. The classic that gets into my skin is you need to work on your executive presence. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, that's a whole conversation. They've had some sort of feedback, right? That's one reason they come to me. Another is they've got burnout and they've come to me because, well, they don't necessarily know they've got burnout, but they're coming to me because they're like, I'm considering leaving the industry. A lot of women come to me thinking about leaving technology and come to me for a consultation on like, what are my options? Which I will always support. Although I have a passion for getting women into tech, keeping them in tech, ultimately, when a woman comes to talk to me, I am there to support them wholeheartedly. If I can't support that woman, I'm doing an injustice to the human race, right? So, a lot of women come to me to have that conversation. I'm thinking about leaving the industry. They might be a techie, they might be HR, they might be legal, they might be marketing. It doesn't mean they're all technologists, but they're thinking about leaving the industry or doing, quitting and becoming a Pilates instructor, because they are burning up, they might not know that's what's going on. And the other one they come to me for is they are pissed. They have reached a point where they are just angry. And it's fascinating. Sometimes you get people who are simultaneously angry and have imposter syndrome. So in one moment, they will be feeling like, I can't possibly do this thing. Perfectionism's coming in, fear of failure, fear of like what I'm being judged, and anger at not being heard. And I think when you reach that point, that takes a lot of time for us to work through, because you have a right to be angry, but your anger is not serving you. Your anger is actually, there is a place where anger can serve you, very rarely, but most of the time at that point, we get women who, God, this might come across as victim blaming. I have to be really careful with my words here, but I think it's a really important point to get across. We know that women are more likely to be told they're aggressive rather than assertive for the same choice of words. And often we stop the debate there. We get angry as a gender, and I think we have a right to, for being treated differently from men. But here's something I do see going on. Men should probably be told they're being aggressive too, some of the time. And just because we're the only ones not being, we're the ones being told that and our male counterparts aren't, doesn't mean that that's not useful information. Now, there is absolutely situations where women are being told they're aggressive when they are just being assertive. But when I dig into this and I realize they're also angry, I'm like, okay, let's deal with the anger and then let's see how you show up. When we show up angry, it doesn't serve anyone. And it comes to my philosophy around self-awareness, which talks to your theme of self-care, because I think self-awareness is a form of self-care. If we don't understand how we're thinking and feeling and operating, we can't show up as our best selves. We can't do the work that's going to change the world. So it really starts with unpicking, why did you turn up in this call with me? Why are we having this conversation? How are you thinking and feeling? The symptoms, what you're being told, what you're experiencing at work, then help us unpick, why are you showing up that way? My view is I want you to be your best authentic self. I'm a big believer in authenticity, which is another topic for another day. But that means showing up as your best self, not your rightly angry self. You have a right to be annoyed and upset when you're being treated the way you're being treated. But you know what? It stops serving you at a point. That's a very long-winded answer to that. Yeah. It's because it's a big topic.
It is a big topic. And I realized when I was asking you that question, it's a really big topic and a big question, and also very individualized when you're doing your work with your clients. And so you brought up, honestly, you brought up like kind of three main points of like three frequent concerns and challenges that come up. And we may just need to have you on the show again, because I feel like we could dive into each one of those.
Yeah, we could, yes.
For a full episode. We're not going to do that right now, just for time's sake, but I'm just going to recap those three sort of main concerns. And then Yeah, we might just need to have you on again. And then I want to dive deeper into the last one that you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one you brought up was this idea of working on your executive presence. I get that question a lot too, and that would be an interesting one to dive into. I know you said that one kind of irritates you to an extent as well, of like, what do you even mean by that?
So many things.
Exactly.
There's something there, but it's so complicated.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's also so individualized. Like, what does
100%.
executive presence mean to you? There's so much to unpack there. That may be for another show. And then the other one is burnout, people coming to you, leaving the industry, maybe not even realizing that they're burned out. And we talked a little bit about this on your show, the episode that I came on for your show. So I'll just say to our listeners, go check out Toni's show
100%.
for that episode with both of us. That's Leading Women in Tech, to hear a little bit more about that. And then this last idea that you brought up is really interesting to me, about this idea of feeling angry, and rightfully so, understandably and rightfully so. And this is something that I often hear from my clients that I work with too, that, you know, if I say something passionately in a room, in a meeting, I get called and labeled emotional or angry. Whereas if a man says the same exact thing just as passionately, they don't get labeled that. Rather, they're just heard, which is so interesting. And so, you know, this idea also of what you said of even that language of women more likely being labeled as aggressive, maybe for the same exact tone and verbiage as a man who may be labeled as assertive. Diving a little bit deeper, and this may be sort of like a bit of a circle here, like a vicious circle sort of thing here, because rightfully so, you may get angry, and it may be that you were simply being assertive and not aggressive. But then when that anger kicks in, which is rightfully so and completely valid, but when that kicks in, maybe perhaps, and again, this would be completely individual and situation based, that you would unpack, you know, that we would both unpack as coaches with our clients, of, well, now did that assertiveness, because that anger got mixed in, now actually become aggressive? And so that's really interesting what you brought up. And I do believe that anger serves a purpose as well. I often talk about how our emotions can be signals to us that something that maybe we're being treated unfairly, maybe we're being disrespected, maybe we need to do something a bit differently. But again, like you said, it's okay taking that message and then deciding with that self-awareness and intention what you want to do with it.
I think that bit there is really key. If you don't know what is going on in your body, if you don't know that you're angry, and I think a lot of the time we don't, at least I don't know I'm angry until afterwards, because I kind of come across as calm when I'm angry. Or frustrated is another one that I think sometimes we don't realize we're frustrated until later. If you don't know what's going on in your body, the way we think dictates how we feel, and that dictates what we do and say, right? You can control that to some extent, but not fully. If you therefore are thinking and feeling a particular way, it is going to be changing how you're showing up. And that is not necessarily wrong, but if you don't know that you're doing it, you're not showing up as your best self. And I think a lot of the time, all I'm trying to do is interrupt, give yourself a moment to understand how you're thinking and feeling might be changing your situation. Is there anything you want to do about it? No, I'm all about saying you don't have to do anything about it, but go in with your eyes wide open.
Right.
There are absolutely times to be angry. There are absolutely times to use a tone that isn't necessarily your calmest version of you. And there are times to go, that's not serving me. I'm going to back up, give myself a moment, and I'm going to calm down, and I'm going to show up the way that I would appreciate somebody showing up in this situation. And I think that's really, really powerful, because men don't get that feedback.
Yeah. I would love for you to share, as we're starting to wrap up the episode, you shared with me, and it's really interesting, I haven't shared this with you yet, but you shared with me that there is a framework that you often will use. And I think those 3 words can be really helpful. The part that I didn't share with you is that I have a similar framework, different words, but the exact same, like, first letter of each word.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Oh gosh,
So
no,
both
that's
of ours
interesting.
are like NPR,
Right.
which here is, in the US, we have National Public Radio. So it's like an easy way to remember it, NPR. But what is your NPR? And then I'll share my NPR, and then we'll share how people can learn more about you and the work you're doing.
Yeah, so it's notice your situation. Like notice, give yourself a moment, give yourself a pause. Pause, literally. You can't pause if you don't notice you should be pausing, and then reframe. Notice, pause, reframe. Reframe allows you to reset your mind, your mindset around it, all that kind of stuff. Notice, pause, reframe. Super simple. I literally spend hours with people, like helping them understand how to use it. But if you can remember, notice, pause, reframe, the fundamentals of like noticing the situation that there's a bodily response going on here, whether that's your stomach kind of like churning, your shoulders getting tense, a tension in your forehead. There's so many different signals we get. Notice it, pause, reduce your cortisol, reduce your adrenaline, breathing in and out. Just bring those hormones down. If you aren't producing your hormones, they leave your body within 30 to 90 seconds for most of us. It's the continuous production of them that's the problem. Pause, and then you can use logic, you can reframe. But if you've still got those hormones raging around your body, you're not going to be able to listen. You're going to be like, hell no to the reframe. So notice, pause, reframe. I love it.
Absolutely.
Tell me what yours are.
I love that too. I love that too. And it is so, and again, we don't have time in this episode to go into the detail of it, but one of my keynotes that I offer is mastering leadership through emotional and nervous system regulation. And I talk all about the physiology and the science behind why this sort of framework is so important. And like what you just said, that you can't quite get to the reframe part when your body is and your nervous system is activated. And that's why that pause is so important. And then the reframe, because then your logical mind can kick in. So mine is name, pause, reflect. It's the same idea.
Yeah, love
but
it.
It is name the feeling. So when you feel that you're getting triggered, name that feeling. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it anxiety? Is it irritability? Name it, because what that does is it separates you from that feeling. So it creates some space around it, and then pause. And that pause can look any which way. A lot of the ways that you just described are great. Take a few deep breaths, step away from the computer, go for a little walk the stairs in your office building, but just pause. And then your logical, cognitive, intellectual part of your brain is able to kick in to make sense of the situation. So then reflect. And then based on that reflection, if you need to express or communicate something to someone, do so. Sometimes you don't need to, and you find in that pause and that reflection that you don't need to. But so yours, NPR, notice, pause, reframe. Another version of NPR, name, pause, reflect. Both are very similar in the reasoning and the science behind it, but valuable tools for our listeners. So
love that.
So many great takeaways from today's show. I am curious, can you let people know where they can learn more about you, where they can find your podcast and the work that you're doing?
So I'm online pretty much everywhere, mainly on LinkedIn, but I do have a website as well, tonicollis.com. I'm Toni Collis on LinkedIn as well. I think I'm like the only one there, so I'm pretty easy to find. But tonicollis.com, if you go to /resources, you can find a couple of free resources. But also on my homepage, you'll see a link to the podcast Leading Women in Tech, where we will have Shitha's episode coming very soon. They might be going out at the same time. I don't think we've penciled in our release dates for these two recordings, so it's kind of fun. But yeah, you can find everything I do on there and how I support women. And, you know, if you are struggling with any of this, my best piece of advice is like reach out to someone like me or Shitha. Please just do something before it gets worse every time.
That's a great wrap-up message for this episode. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a joy.
Thank you so much. I love this conversation. I could talk to you all day about this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to share my story. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and write a quick positive review wherever you're tuning in, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Your reviews really do help the show reach more people who need it. And as a free gift, don't forget to download your Radiant Living Starter Guide at radiantlivinginstitute.com.